Good evening and welcome to tonight's Celtic Fest event. I'm Susan O'Brien and I'll be your host for the evening. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are situated on the traditional, ancestral and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. Now, we're here in North Vancouver with the owner of Loved and Kneaded, Sarah Elliott Gannon. Sarah's going to be sharing with us tonight her secrets to make the best Irish brown soda bread that she knows she can make. If you're joining us late and you're registered late, you don't happen to have all of these ingredients in front of you, do not worry. Sit back, relax, and enjoy, and you'll pick up some tips along the way anyway. If you want to take any pictures tonight, do feel free to upload them to social media with the hashtag CelticFestVancouver. You want to see the eggs crashing on the ground, the flour going everywhere, and of course your brave bakes at the end of the night. Also, we're going to be giving away one of Sarah's brown breads at the end of the night too, to one very lucky participant who's taking part with us tonight. Not even taking part, watching from home. So bear that in mind and tune in for the finish. Now, Sarah, come away in here. How did you get on? How did you get into this? What brought you to baking in the first place?
So I've always baked with my nanny Doris, and so I moved here to Vancouver 6 years ago. Last year, when the pandemic sort of started, my hours were reduced at work, and I was gifted a sourdough starter by a customer. And that kind of rekindled the baking love. Sourdough is a bit of a pain for me, so I'm sticking with the traditional Irish soda bread. It's my favorite, so yeah.
And so that's what we're making tonight. It's the brown soda bread, so it's white soda bread as well.
Yeah.
What's kind of involved in that?
So soda bread is, it's a quick bread. That's another way that people call it. And the reason it's called a quick bread is because no pressure, but you have to get it in the oven quite quick, because
that's where I'm going wrong the whole time.
Maybe that's it. Yeah. So there's a little bit of science behind it. So we'll go through that once we start mixing our ingredients together. And so very excited.
Oh, well, good. I'm glad that you're here with us this evening. I'm glad that you're all watching from home. If you have any questions at all, throw them into the Zoom chat and we'll ask Sarah as we go on for the night. Now, I'm only going to get in the way here. Too many chefs spoil the broth and all that kind of crap. Leave you to it. Do ask us any of your questions and I'll ask them as we go through.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the lovely introduction and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. We're going to make traditional brown soda bread, and so I'm just going to get cracking. I have most of my ingredients all weighed out. We'll do a little bit of weighing through as we go. So what I usually do first is I get my cup measure. So I have, in this bowl, I have whole wheat flour, and then in this bowl I have white flour. What I do is a combination of brown and white. I've had a lot of customers that ask me how we get the lovely texture on our bread that we make. And I think part of the reason is because the whole wheat flour that you can get here in Canada is quite coarse. So if you go with 100% whole wheat, it can be quite dense and it requires a lot more liquid than if you sub a little bit of the white flour in. Now, something that's good to know as well is that if you are celiac or trying to stay away from the gluten, you can always sub in the 1-to-1 gluten-free flour and it'll work perfectly as well with the recipe. So let's go. So I have my brown flour here. So we're going to do 2.5 cups of the brown flour. And actually, do you know what? Before I get going, I should mention 3 steps that are very important. You need to tie your hair up if you have enough to tie up. You need to take your rings off and wash your hands in those 3 steps. I've already done it off camera, so I'm going to get going here. So we have 2.5 cups of brown flour needs to go in. So that's, I have my half cup measure here, so that's 1. And we're going to also make sure that we're leveling off our cups as we go.
Yes. Tell me now, Sarah, so if I'm presetting the oven, because I know that's important too, what kind of temperature should I put that on?
Yes, so we're going to preset, thank you.
Wow.
Oh gosh,
yeah,
you're right.
Somebody out there,
So you're going to preheat your oven. So depending, everybody's oven is different, but with a fan oven, you want to preheat it to 325 Fahrenheit. And if you have a convection oven, like most apartments that have a convection oven, you're going for 350. So yeah.
All right, okay, very good. Now, I have a question myself, because I know the soda part is the whole important part. What's the difference between the baking sodas and bicarbonated sodas? To be honest, anytime I'm baking, I kind of just pick whichever one I have and just throw in an extra dollop of something else. Do you have to have everything, especially if people are watching at home now don't have the ingredients?
So the most important, hence the name of the bread, the most important is the soda, the baking soda. Now, baking soda and bicarbonate of soda are the same thing.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Not sure.
So you're
I look at though, they have the two of them, and I'm like,
well, there's baking soda and baking powder. They are two different things.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking.
So the difference between the soda and the baking powders, the soda is an acid.
Okay.
Right? So that's actually what creates the rise in the bread. So your buttermilk is your base, and your soda is your acid, and it's the reaction that's caused between those two that creates little bubbles. Yeah, and that's why there's no yeast in the bread. So yeah.
Well, I'll let you keep going then.
Right.
I just have those couple of questions.
Well, thank you. Yes,
right.
thank you. Okay, excellent. So now in here I have my 2.5 cups of brown flour, and I'm going to add to this 1 cup of white flour, and that's what I have in here. So again, we're leveling off. So that's 1, and that's 2. Okay, so once we have those in together, let's get them out of the way. You can use your hands, you can use a fork, you can use, I have this, it's called a dough whisk. It's not necessary, but it's a nice little tool that my mom sent me. What's important with this is temperature. So you want to, if you have hot hands, I have very clammy hot hands, so I tend to use this so that I don't melt the butter too quickly, because you want to make sure that you keep your dough at a nice cool temperature before it goes into the oven.
Yeah, Sarah, questions are flying into the
Brilliant.
Thanks, do keep them up because I know they're all important. Do you need a sieve at this point or anything, or
No.
should you have used them at the start?
No, you don't need a sieve. I mean, you can if you want, but I never use a sieve, and especially with the whole wheat flour, there's quite a lot of kind of coarseness. Yeah, exactly. And if you use the sieve, you're going to lose that, and then you're going to lose some of the nice texture. Yeah. So
with the buttermilk as well, is there any way of making buttermilk if you don't happen to have it? You can't find it, you know.
Yeah.
So all these crazy shops here in Vancouver, but sometimes they run out of the things.
Yes, very true. So traditionally, I think that's with a lot of Irish cuisine is that we sort of tended to use what we had and never let it go to waste. So originally, this recipe would have been made with milk that had gone sour, so as not to get rid of it. Okay. So you can actually sour milk yourself if you can't get your hands on buttermilk. So you can add some vinegar to it. That's one way to do it. Or you can add a little bit of lemon juice. You don't want to go overboard because it will curdle the milk and separate it, and that's no good.
You don't want that.
No, exactly. Yeah. So yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'll leave it. I'll keep going. Keep
I'll keep trucking along. Yeah, keep bringing the questions, because you know the more questions that come in, the more I'm remembering. So that's fantastic. So once I have my flour, I've just sort of mixed the flours in together, so that they're nice and evenly distributed. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add my powders. Okay. So those of you who are baking along, in the recipe it calls for cream of tartar, which is, it's optional, and the reason it's optional is because it's not going to make or break your soda bread, but what it will do, it's just an extra little boost of acidity to give your bread a big rise. But if you don't have cream of tartar, don't worry, you don't need to sub in any extra baking soda or anything. So I'm going to first add my soda. So I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of baking soda. So I have that going in there. And again, you want to make sure that you're leveling your spoon so that you're not going too overboard. It is possible to add too much soda, and that can actually result in turning your bread green. So you don't want to be doing that.
Yeah. Tell me, Sarah, in terms of the ratio of everything to everything, it's important to get the right amount of things in, because you're going to end up with something different otherwise. The cups of flour, again, somebody's asking out there, what were the measurements of the cups of flour to go in? So we mixed a couple of this one. So it was 2.5 cups of whole wheat or brown flour and 1 cup of white flour, and that's just like your generic cup measurement. And is it the end of the world if you kind of like, can I guess it a little bit, if people don't have proper measuring spoons? It's not the end of the world. You know, it's not. I mean, obviously, in an ideal world, you want to be as precise as you can be, but it's not going to, if you put like 3 tablespoons in, then you're going to have some issues. But you know, if you go a little bit deep on your spoons, you're going to be okay. Yeah. You can lash on the butter afterwards. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be
okay. And just a reminder again, on the oven, it's preheated to what temperature?
So it's 325 if you have a fan oven, and it's 350 if you have a convection.
Amazing. Sorry, I'm interrupting you the whole time.
Oh, you're grand. You're grand. now, so we've got our soda in already, and so I'm going to put that to the side, so I'm done with it. And then we're going to add 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Now, normally you wouldn't be putting any baking powder in, but I would, if I was home in Ireland, I would be using self-raising flour for the white, but I can't get that here. So I'll add a little bit of baking powder to make sure that we get a nice rise on the bread. So again, I'm leveling off. So there's my baking powder in. I'll put that over there. And then we're going to add our cream of tartar. So that's just a teaspoon of cream of tartar. Okay. And also we're going to add just a little pinch of salt. So we're getting that in there now. I'll put these to the side. So again, you're going to take your spatula or your fork or whatever you're using to mix, and you're just going to get that sort of all combined in there together. Now, the next step, we're going to add our butter. So what I like to do, depending on whether if you have colder or your butter is hard or soft, I usually like to grate the butter in. And the reason for that is because we want sort of to get the butter into small lumps, and the smallest lumps we can. So if I grate the butter in, that sort of cuts the work. It means that I'm not handling as much. So I'm going to get my 2 tablespoons of butter, and I'm very professionally, my baker's eye, I'm just going to eyeball it. But if you can use a tablespoon measurement, it's a little bit easier with softer butter for your tablespoon measurement. So I'm going to put my grater in there, and I'll just grate the butter in, and that will make it a little bit easier to incorporate into your dough. Now, and the nice thing, what you're looking for once you get your butter all grated in, is you're looking for that, what they call a breadcrumb texture. And again, with the butter, it doesn't matter if you add a little bit too much. I mean, I was going to say too much butter never killed anybody, but that's not true. It definitely has. But, you know, if you add a little bit, if you go a bit over on the butter, you're going to be okay. So,
Sarah,
yes.
With the butter, because I know it's important, like room temperature, cold, whatever. Does it really matter kind of here? Because obviously to grate it, you'll need it to be a certain kind of temperature, but for people watching at home, could it be anything?
Oh, yeah, it could be anything. It's not, that's what I'm saying. You know, you could use warm butter or cold butter. Yeah. No, it's not going to affect your bread. No,
okay,
not at all.
And salted butter, unsalted butter?
I usually use salted butter,
okay.
And I think traditionally that would have been used. In fact, truly traditionally there'd be no butter in it.
Yeah.
But I think it gives it a nice. I mean,
more butter.
Right. That's what I think.
So need a butter loaf.
Exactly. You know what?
Next year.
Cut the stream and just open a pack of butter.
I need to do it again. Thanks for that.
Grand, yeah. Okay. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Like the temperature of your butter is not going to kill you. It's more for ease of incorporating it into the dough. So I have this now all ready. I'll put that over there. So we're not looking at it. So what you're going to do now, you're going to get your hands in, and you're going to use your fingertips. So you want to coat the butter that you have in the bowl there. You want to sort of coat it with flour so it's easy to incorporate. Then we're going to do this with our fingers, right? So you're sort of pinching it in between your fingertips, and you're doing that until you have no big lumps of butter left. If you're left with big lumps of butter, again, it's not the end of the world. The nice thing about soda bread is that it's not as sensitive as your sourdough would be. You know, you can lose a whole day's work with sourdough, whereas with soda bread, if you have too much butter, it's going to be fine. And with this texture, you want your lumps as small as possible. But if the lumps are big, again, it's not the end of the world. You just might end up with a little bit of an air pocket. Okay, so once we have our butter incorporated, I'm pretty happy with that texture now. Now, I don't know if you can see that, but I'm going to just slowly sort of pour it there so you can get a look and see what you're supposed to be looking like now. So the next step is we're going to start adding our egg. And once we start adding the egg and the buttermilk in, that's when we sort of have to move a little bit quicker, because your baking soda is going to start immediately reacting with your buttermilk. And the sooner you can get it in the oven at that point, the better the rise is going to be on your bread. Okay. Now, something interesting that I learned doing a little bit of research for this class was that the original recipe for soda bread, well, what I could see was that it's actually indigenous North American bread is very, very similar to soda bread, which is called bannock. Now, they would have used fire ash instead of soda, because that would have the same acidic properties. And the only difference really between bannock and Irish soda bread is that bannock is always cooked on a griddle, whereas soda bread can be cooked on a griddle or in the oven. So that's just an interesting connection between our two cultures there. So yeah, I'm going to start adding my egg. I like to just crack the egg directly into it. Some recipes say that you should whisk the egg before, but I just go mad and I put it directly in. So what I've done here is I've created a well in the center of the ingredients. And what I mean by that is that I've just sort of pushed the flour to the sides of the bowl, so that there's a divot in the middle of our dry mix. And that's going to make it easier to incorporate the flour and the buttermilk in. So, yes. Yes.
The well thing, the minute you said it, I can just remember my mum saying it.
Yeah.
Anytime she's baking anything, make a well now in the centre there until all go in. Can we show people at home what you mean by a well?
Yeah, of course.
Visual, I'm not sure if the camera can pick it up there. But
now, I don't know if you can see that, but I'm going to hold that there. So you should have just a bit of a gap in the center of your ingredients, so that you're gonna it's a well, so your liquid is gonna go in there. And I mean that's what wells are, I guess. Right?
Lay up out of it as well.
Yeah.
I do have questions about the milk, buttermilk, and I suppose even maybe kind of like content to the butter too. Like the 3.25%, the 1%. What kind of?
I mean, again,
I don't know my milks now that well.
That's okay. That's all right. I know that like the normal buttermilk that you get, I think is 3.25, or it's quite high fat.
Kind of full fat.
But I have also seen in the shops here that you can get lower fat, and I have actually made it with lower fat buttermilk when I couldn't find the regular stuff. And it doesn't make any, there's no suffering to the bread. Yeah.
So it's the same as well if you were making your own buttermilk too, and you're adding in your vinegar, just whichever milk you have in the fridge or whatever.
Yeah,
exactly. Vinegar. Yeah. For 15 minutes or something to like probably.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And then it'll be good to go. Oh God, coddle! I love a good coddle. Actually, this soda bread would be nice with a bowl of coddle. I tell you.
Now, or even nice to share with the bowl at home. You know, tea and everything. Breakfast in bed. Now I'll let you go again.
Okay. All right. That's okay now. So, the egg's nearly rolling away there. Lucky catch. So I'm going to crack my egg into this well in the ingredients that I've made here. A lot of people will tend to do this with their egg. This is not a good idea, only because if you do that and you break the shell could actually go into the egg, and then you end up getting shell on your bread, and that's not a very pleasant texture. So what I'll usually do is crack it on a flat surface. So I don't know if you can see that there, but the egg is cracked kind of neatly and there's no shells after going in. So I'm just going to crack that into the center there. Okay, and we're going to put that in the garbage. Now I'm going to take my dough whisk. This is a great little tool, I have to say, and one that my mother sent me in the post. My mum is from Denmark, and this is a Danish dough whisk. So I'm hybrid in the two cultures now that I have. It's a very handy little tool. It's, as I said, it's not necessary. A fork will do, but I like to use this. So I'm just whisking the egg in the well there that I've made. And I'm not trying to incorporate all the flour into the egg. I'm just sort of making sure that the egg the yolk is broken and that it's mixed enough. And I'll show you sort of what that should look like. So it's not completely incorporated, but it's properly whisked now in there. So are you ready? We're going to start our chemical reaction now. So a couple of things before we start adding the buttermilk is when this bread does not require kneading. In fact, it requires almost the opposite of kneading. If you work it too much and you knead it, you will start to develop gluten in the flour, and that will make your bread quite dense. And you'll overwork it. I'm thinking like I'm Paul Hollywood now in the Great British Bake Off, but you don't want to be doing that. You want to make sure that basically you want to add your buttermilk, you want to just bring your dough together, and then there's no sort of elbow grease or leg work needed. So we're going to start adding the buttermilk, and you just add it bit by bit, Okay, so you're not going to dump all the buttermilk in at the one time because, again, depending on what flour you're using, what brand flour, it could be a different blend. There could be a different coarseness. So with the buttermilk, the recipe calls for 1.75 or 2 cups. I can't remember. That's terrible now, but you might need 2.5 cups. You might need 1.5 cups. It's one of those things that you're looking for texture with your dough rather than specifics with the ingredients. You're looking for what they call a wet, shaggy dough, which doesn't sound very appetizing, but will be when you bake it. So yeah, we're going to start slowly adding the buttermilk. And again, we're just sort of deepening that well in the center where we've put our egg. And I'll just pour a little bit in to start. So just bit by bit, like maybe a 1/4 cup at a time. And then we're going to go around the side of the bowl, and your hand should kind of be like this, like what shape would you call that? It's like, I don't know, not a claw with your fingers together. So I'm going to go around the side of the bowl, and as I'm bringing the flour in to the center, I'm going to also turn the bowl so that I'm making sure that I'm getting all the flour incorporated. So I'm just going around the sides of the bowl. I'm bringing the flour into the middle. And once you feel like your dough is ready for more buttermilk, where you can't see any liquid, you can then start adding a little bit more. And each time you're adding, you're going to recreate that well in the center of the ingredients. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit more. Yeah, come and talk to me now, Susan.
Yeah, sorry, Sarah.
No, you're all right.
Keep our distance.
Yeah,
it's all very tough these days to try and do anything big.
Exactly.
But I'll keep you working because I know that we've got our time kind of issue here.
The science is happening.
I'll tell you. I do have a quick question though. So you have a tin. I'm not sure if people can see it already, kind of on the table, ready to go. What's involved in the prep for the tin? Do you like, that butter and flour it, or do you just put in paper?
Once I have this all mixed together, I'm going to show you. There's with the tin, you can do whatever you like. The nice thing with soda bread is that it's gnarly, it's kind of knobbly looking. It doesn't have to be beautiful. Exactly.
My kind of bread.
Yeah, me too. So the only reason I like to use the tin is because it sort of keeps the uniform shape. But if you prefer the kind of free form,
like a loaf
let it do whatever it wants.
Yeah,
you can put it in a loaf tin, or you could just put it on a flat sheet. Usually, you can shape it a little bit. I'll show you the shaping once I start. Once I get this all mixed together. But yeah, with the tin, you want to put, if you're using a tin or a sheet or whatever, you want to make sure that you put a little bit of grease-proof paper down. And then what I will do with the grease-proof paper is I'll put a little bit of oil or butter on it, but then I'll also put a little bit of flour, just because it's so sad when you make the bread and it sticks to the tin. It's just heartbreaking. You're right at the last hurdle.
So, and that would have been a great picture though for social media. We shouldn't have told that at all. We're getting all the pictures of burnt bread and everything else from that. Which reminds me, anybody's got any pictures, surely there's probably people making it with their grandmothers or their mothers at home with their boyfriends.
Want to see.
There's fights starting probably too. But throw up a couple of pictures onto social media under the hashtag Celtic Fest Vancouver, and we'll have a look and see how they're getting on.
Yes, I might be put out of business.
Well, I hope you've kept one of the secrets out. There's something here she's done wrong. She's told you something that's not supposed to happen.
It's sabotage.
Anyway, I'll let you get back into this very time. It's sensitive.
Yes,
so keep working away yourself.
So I have continued adding my buttermilk bit by bit here, and my dough is nearly ready. This, don't worry about. A dirty hand or a hand full of dough, that's usually a good sign. So once you've got all your buttermilk in, your bread will sort of start coming together, and I'm going to show you now. It's quite wet. Okay, you can see it's quite wet and sticky. And when they say shaggy, they mean, I don't know if you can see that texture there, but it's sort of pulling apart. You can see sort of almost like stringy kind of I don't know. Yeah, texture. So I'm going to put that just to the side now. I'm going to take a 15-minute turnaround, 15 seconds. I'm going to wash my hands very quickly. That's why you don't want to have your rings on, because you don't want your ring full of dough, because that wouldn't be ideal.
And tell me, Sarah, there's people watching at home, I believe, tonight. Someone very special indeed. Is your mum Tanya watching?
I think my mum Tanya is watching. Hi, Mammy.
All the support from home, support from here even as well. Like you came over first, you came over with your partner Jack.
I did, yeah.
I'd imagine it's quite a daunting task to set up your own business here in a different country as well and stuff. So all the support like that from your mum, from your partner is probably very important.
Yeah, my brother-in-law Matthew and his girlfriend Kat have been a great help. Like, so I've got such a great support network, you know. And I have to shout out to Mary Shannon as well. I know she's watching a customer of mine, and she's just another cheerleader. So
the amount of customers now you're gonna have.
I know.
You see this now later.
Next year I'll be going blah 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 blah.
I'll have a list of all the names. And then we'll have our lemon meringue pies,
exactly.
butter breads and everything else. I'll leave you to it again. But talk into us there in the chat. Let us know where you're calling in from. So there's people watching in Ireland, there's people watching around BC and everywhere else who'd like to know where you're calling in from this evening. All right. Yes. Go on away there again, Sarah.
Okay, so my dough is ready. This is what it should look like. It's not maybe the most attractive looking. I think it's beautiful. But so now we're going to take our tin. So what I have here is just a regular sort of, you can use an 8 or 9 inch cake tin. I've just put a bit of greaseproof paper in it. And so what I'm going to do now, as I said, I'm going to put a little bit of spray oil, coat the bottom with a bit of spray. Okay. And then if you have a little bit of white flour left over or brown flour, it doesn't matter. I find that the white flour is a bit less coarse, so it's a bit easier. So I'll just sprinkle a little bit in the tin, in the bottom. And then what you're going to do is pick it up and sort of tap it at the side. So you coat the bottom of your tin evenly in flour. And that's just, I have three things here combating the bum of the bread sticking to the tin. So we should be good to go. Now, I've tapped that and that's all coated there. If you have a little bit of extra flour, which I do here, you can tap it out. I'm just going to tap it onto the counter. Or you can tap it into your bin or wherever, that might be a bit easier. So now we've got that prepped. We're going to get the dough out, in. We're getting there. Very exciting. So that goes into the tin. And it should all come together. You shouldn't be left, I have a tiny little bit there at the bottom, but you shouldn't be left with any flour or much of anything sort of residual in the bowl. So there we go. So that's what you're going to have now. The next thing, what I usually do is, it might be a little bit rustic, but I'll sprinkle a little bit of flour onto my counter. Here I've got flour all over me. And I'm going to pat my hand in this little pile of flour. Okay, so looks like that. And I'm just going to pat the bread down a little bit. And this is the shaping that I'm talking about. Now you can be as particular as you like here. You can go right around the edges and try and make a perfect circle. I think part of the charm of Irish soda bread is that you're getting a different looking loaf every time, but the same fabulous taste. So I have my dough sort of patted down there, so that's what you should be dealing with now. Now we're going to take, you can use a brush or you can use a clean hand, and we're going to take a bit of buttermilk and we're going to do a buttermilk wash on the top. Okay, and now we're getting to the most important step that my granny would tell you. We have to cut across in the top of this bread. Now there's a couple of reasons why you would cut across in the top. The true reason is that you want to give your bread the chance to rise without splitting. So we're giving it a little bit of growing room. But what my nanny would tell you is the real reason is that we are letting the fairies out of this bread. So it's Irish folklore that apparently if you don't put a cross in the top, fairies will be in there and they'll be interfering with the rise in your bread, and we don't want that. Now, some people will tell you that it's the devil in there, or some people will tell you that it's puka. But my nanny used to say fairies, maybe it's because it's less scary, I don't know. So we're going to cut across, and I just made a big X in the top of your dough. So I'm going to start from one side to the other. I like to use a serrated knife rather than like a clean blade like that, because I find that the serrated knife doesn't drag the dough. So if you've spent a lot of time sort of shaping it, you don't want to have to be messing around reshaping it after you've cut the cross. So a serrated knife will work a bit better. So we've got one cross over there, And then we've got another coming this way. Okay, so this is what your dough should look like once you've washed it and you've cut the cross in. Now, the other thing we have to do here is each quarter of this bread, we're going to poke a hole in. Now, you can do it with a knife. That's what I usually take a knife and I'll go like that. 1, 2, 3, 4 in each quarter. And that is to represent Leinster, Munster, Ulster and Connacht, which are the 4 provinces of Ireland. So that's, you've got the whole country in your bread here. Now the last little bit, and this is also optional, is that you can take some oats and sprinkle them on the top. My nanny used to do that, and I think a lot of people put a few oats on the top. It just kind of makes it look nice, a little bit of a garnish. So I'm just going to sprinkle them on there. Yeah.
Next, Sarah, we're talking about folklore and everything.
Yeah.
You're from a very creative family yourself.
Yeah.
Your mother is involved in something that every Irish person should know about.
Yes.
What has she made before for the city streets of Dublin that we'd all recognise?
So my mum ran a bronze foundry for many years. She's a fantastic artist. She's actually my boyfriend's favourite artist. And I know I have to say that because she's my nanny. But yeah, he's clued in. But yeah, she cast the Molly Malone. Her and my dad in their foundry would have cast the Molly Malone. So I have big shoes to fill.
Big shoes to fill.
Yeah. So here I am making bread.
And tell me about the bread cut itself.
Yes.
Just for people at home, how deep does it need to go? Is this? You're not cutting it all the way through.
You're not cutting it all the way through. You're going about a little shy of halfway down into the bread. Okay. Right. So about a third of the way into the bread is where you're cutting. And again, if you go all the way through, your bread is not gonna, it's not gonna destroy it. Yeah. Right. Okay. But you're going about halfway down into the bread. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think you have a couple of bit more oats and stuff to throw on. Yeah. I'm gonna hop off for 2 seconds. I'll come back for the finish before we pop it in the oven.
Real excellent. So yeah, I'm just gonna add my few little oats, and actually once I've sprinkled these right on top, we're ready to put it right in the oven. And actually, if you can look at your bread now. So that's what supposed to look like before we go in the oven, okay? And you can see mine isn't a perfect shape. I've got a big lump kind of here, and I've got sort of a knobbly bit there. That's totally fine. You'll notice when you bake it that it sort of naturally comes together in a circular shape. But that's why using the round tin sort of encourages it to keep that round shape if you're particular about the shape of your bread. So I'm ready to put this in the oven. And we're going to put it in the oven for 45 minutes to a half hour, depending on, everybody's oven is different. You can check it part way through, but please, if you want a nice soda bread, do not open that oven for the first 20 minutes. It needs that 20 minutes of direct heat to really get the rise. So the rise in the bread happens in the early part of it being in the oven. So have restraint and don't open the oven until at least 20 minutes. And if you can help it, sort of leave it for 40 minutes if you can. I never can. I always need to know what it looks like. But certainly for the first 20 minutes, don't touch that oven. Okay, so we're going to put this in the oven now. Yeah, very excited.
Very excited. Can you tell as well from the smell, around the half-hour mark or something?
Oh, yeah.
So that's the time when I'd open the oven as well, and sure, I'm like, oh, I should have left it for 10 minutes.
No, do you know what? That's a very good. Yeah, once you start to smell it, that means it's cooking. Okay, right? And actually, I'm stealing that.
No. And it's funny when you were saying about the oven door. I come from a small little kind of farmhousey kind of thing out in the countryside before. You'd be standing in front of the range to keep warm, Yeah. And mum would have something in the oven, anything now, buns or anything or something, and you'd go over and something like that. You just get used to the oven. You open the door and just stand next to it. You're not going to fall in when you're old enough obviously now, not a child. And she'd come down giving out to us, close the door of the oven. It's not going to rise. It's just something, you have to listen to your mothers out there. Yeah. Listen to Sarah. You're not going to listen to your mother. No.
Yeah. So I'm going to pop this in the oven now. And I'm going to come back to you.
Exciting. Okay. Do you know, my favourite part the whole time afterwards is the cleanup. I say it in jest because it's what, again, throw up your photos at home, what you're doing now, how you've gotten on, any mishaps. There's bound to be spillages around the place, some eggs gone awry somewhere. And I'm sure some of you, though, are immaculate bakers. Some of them are going to have amazing breads. We want to see them. So hashtag Celtic Fest Vancouver before the end of the night, throw up your stuff, and we'd love to get around to it. Which also brings me to, there's a winner for your brown bread. We've picked somebody at random from the participants in tonight's event. It's Miss Laura McGlynn. Laura will be on to you after tonight to let you know how you can pick up your brown bread from Sarah.
Congratulations, Laura.
Exciting. Now, Sarah, it's an important moment. I'm almost going to let you do it yourself because I know it's important for you. So I'm going to back out this way. Just to give you a bit of space.
Now, before I have my big shining moment, I just want to mention that when you put your bread in the oven, you want to bake it on the center rack, ideally. If it's too high, you'll burn the top of it. If it's too low, you'll burn the bottom. So in an ideal world, you want to have it sort of in the middle of your oven. When I'm baking at home in my apartment, I've got a very small, not very sophisticated oven, and it has 2 shelves. So there's only a top and a bottom. But what I'll do is I'll take both of the shelves out and sort of put one right in the center of the oven. Now, the other thing is to mention about the tins, the type of tins that you can use. Ideally, you should be using like your typical like metal baking tin or silicone baking tin. If you have you can do it in cast iron. Some people do it in a cast iron container. But my only issue with that is that sometimes the cast iron it retains quite a lot of heat. So sometimes the cast iron will cook the bottom of your bread quicker than the rest of it. So I sort of tend to just stick to the regular baking tin type. Now, for the moment that I've been most excited for, here is one I made earlier. Okay, so here we go. This is what we should be looking for. A nice, lovely dark brown crust on the outside. You can still see the cross. The cross isn't going to look as deep once it's baked, but we know it's there. So yeah, what do you think of that, Susan?
I'd be excited. Literally, I can smell it from here, and I've been waiting just to. Oh, I can't wait for you to put into it and add some butter to it. And I was looking earlier. Yeah. You know, we've got all our ingredients in your little yellow butter dish, which I love. Thanks, room temperature. You know? Yeah. And I was like, what's she going to be doing with the butter? And of course, it's for this part.
No, this is the baking butter.
Oh yes,
that's the easy.
Oh, butter. I see. You're professional. No. Right. Well, yes, this is what it's supposed to look like. Everybody at home. It's like the first time that some of the viewers have seen what an actual Irish brown bread looks like, because there's some people watching here who aren't Irish, and this is a whole new first for them. This is going to be quite an experience when you dig in with your cup of tea. Make your tea now before you put in.
Yeah, I have mine already here. Thanks, Emma, for the mug. Yeah.
And yeah, so it has that kind of little cross in it. You've let the fairies out. What's on the inside now, Sarah?
Yes.
Can we cut into it as well?
Yeah, we cut butter. Absolutely. Now, when you want to check if your bread is made, it's one of those ones that you just can't tell by looking at it. And also, you want to double check that it's fully baked before you take it out of the oven. So what I will usually do is I'll take a skewer, and I'll insert it into the bread. And if it comes out and it's clean, your bread is baked. And I'll usually poke it in at a couple of the sort of thickest areas of the bread just to make sure. Now, the other trick that you can do is you turn your bread over and you bat it on the bottom. And if it sounds like a bowron or if it sounds like a drum, then your bread is ready. So yeah, we're going to cut into it now. I'll get my knife here. And we're going to get this bread cut. Susan, do you want to come to the cut? Sure. You know, I don't want you to miss out.
I have to see this part.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut down the center just so that you can see, you know, what it's supposed to look like if I cut the end off, you know. But obviously when you're eating it at home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we're going to cut right down
and should look the center. Knife as well.
That helps. Now, oh my God.
We don't have.
Oh, so here we go. That is our bread. Okay. So as you can see, it's quite like a dense crumb. It's nice and moist on the inside, and the crust on the outside is nice and crunchy. I really like that, you know. Yeah, do you want to give it a smell here?
I'm 6 feet away. Here, there we go. There Sunday morning home in Ireland if there ever was. So I'm going to hop out just while you're cutting it. Just
I'm going to cut a nice slice here. Oh, I cut that too thin. But we'll cut a nice thicker one here. And this is the other thing that's good to know is that when you're cutting your bread, you should really try and wait as long as you can to make sure that it's cool. Because if it's not cool, like I'm too impatient. I haven't waited. So this is a little bit warm still. So it's sort of crumbling apart. So if you can wait until your bread is totally cool, and then you're going to get the best slices out of it. Okay. So yeah, we're almost good here. Yeah. So that there. So this is our soda bread. that's what we should be looking for. Now mine is a bit crumbly here, but you can see this is what your bread should look like. So we're going to have a little bit now with lashes of butter. What do you think, Susan?
Oh my God.
You ready?
And the butter too. And I want to say this, and I don't know about yourself, but I think you're going to agree with me.
I already know what you're going to say.
Butter.
Oh,
Get some real butter now. Forget about your 1% and your 0.5% and your loaves and whatever.
Oh, no.
Get some proper full fat butter into it.
Absolutely.
For a proper bit of an Irish taste.
If we could get Kerrygold here, I tell you, we'd be making millions. That's one of the things that I miss the most is Kerrygold butter. And that's that.
Someone out there now is in charge of like the port here in Vancouver or something, and surely can get us some goods in from Ireland. There's a couple more we've had to that as well. What do we do for now?
No, the Kerrygold is top of my list anyway.
And tell me, in terms for a recap on what we've done now tonight, so you set maybe just to kind of go over again for people. We're setting our oven at what temperature?
So we're setting it for 325 for a fan oven or 350 for convection. And we've got our dry mix, which is our flours and our powders. Yeah. We crumbled our butter in and breadcrumb texture. We've lashed an egg in the well that we created in the center. And then we've slowly incorporated our buttermilk with a claw hand going around the side of the bowl. We have not kneaded the bread, which is why it's so light and fluffy, not dense. And then we lash it in the oven, and here we are. Yeah.
And you can heat this up again. You can toast it. It'll keep for how long will that keep for now? A couple of days in an airtight container.
I mean, if you keep it in an airtight container, it's perfect for 5 days.
Yeah. Or throw some tin foil around it if you're not.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have those airtight containers.
Yes. I actually have a customer out here in Vico, and she'll buy a couple of those at the same time. She'll slice them, she'll freeze the slices. So it freezes very well too. So if you're, alone and have self-control, which I don't have, you can cook the bread and you can, freeze half of it so it survives pretty well in the freezer. That's why it's another thing that's great about silver. It's hardy, it's not sensitive. It's not you can pretty much do what you like with it. It's very hard to mess up.
Yeah. It comes from the olden days. Just people who didn't have any of the fancy stuff we have now.
Exactly.
Should be able to make it at home without needing all these mad, mixers and all that kind of thing. So that makes it a great recipe, I'd imagine, to try if you've never baked before, or if you don't have all the utensils and you just want to try something out. It's a good kind of entryway into Irish food.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really great starting point for as you said, great starting point for baking, but also for Irish food. And that's like I've had a lot of people ask me, what is it about Irish cuisine that you like? And it's funny because a lot of Irish cuisine is kind of atrocious, We
don't really have any.
No, but we do have great cooking traditions and baking traditions, and so that's why I'm delighted to be shining a light on it,
And you have your own social media and stuff here. What's that again for the people
I do
watching?
Indeed. So follow me along on Instagram if you want. So it's loved.and.kneaded. And then the website is lovedandkneadedbakery.com. And that's where you can place your orders and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the important part. Because you're going to be cleared out now for a good month and a half after people watching this.
Fingers crossed.
I hope so. This will be up as well on YouTube next week. We've recorded this evening, so if anybody's missed out, they're unsure, they've missed the secret ingredient which she threw in at the start, and I bet you all missed it. Only joking. Maybe she did. You'll have to watch on YouTube to find out. But thank you tonight. Is there anything else I can add? I hope I'm not forgetting anything now for everything this evening. Hope everybody has all their questions answered at home. I feel like we've a nice little Celtic Fest leprechaun coming in around the corner with a last final question. Maybe Sarah might get it for us there. But throw up any of your pictures at home to Celtic Fest Vancouver, #Celtic Fest Vancouver, even on social media. I realise sometimes when I'm talking that sometimes I speak quite quickly. So I hope you've all caught that over throughout the whole night. Anyway, Sarah, what's our leprechaun said for us this evening?
Just a little thing to mention is that you can cool this on a wire rack. That's actually ideal because you let the airflow get under it and over it. And then another thing, you can put a tea towel under it if you want to.
We do that as well.
And a good way actually to keep it, if you don't want to use tinfoil or containers, that's what my dad used to do. He'd just wrap the bread in a tea towel and it would be good for. So again, it's rustic. It's not sensitive.
You want to get the bread pictures of old Ireland in the kitchen. That's what you'd see, a tea towel over a piece of bread.
Exactly.
And then a whole lashing of good butter now. And good strong tea as well.
Oh yeah, lovely strong
you
cup of
just leave
tea.
the tea in a tea bag. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I can't talk now for the next half an hour.
Sorry, lad.
I'll be munching on this. But get your good tea as well. Steep your tea bag now for a good 5 minutes.
Now I have a very political question to ask you.
Okay, I know what's coming. Is it the brand?
Are you Barry's or Lions?
Oh, Barry's.
Oh yeah.
Are you Barry's? Oh no, we can't. Anyway.
We'll cheers.
Yeah,
we'll cheers
there you go.
friend.
I think that's
okay.
No one will talk us to that. Anyway, thanks for joining us this evening. I think that's about it from us here. still be throwing up questions, even if you have them, onto Sarah's own Instagram and her website again. Give them to us there again now, Sarah.
Loved.and.kneaded on Instagram and lovedanddneadedbakery.com.
Yeah. So, and then don't forget to hashtag Celtic Fest Vancouver for any of your stuff on social media too. I want to know how you all got on tonight. Now I'm finished talking because I'm just waiting to eat this. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for joining us at home. We've had a great time. Thanks to all of our background leprechaun Celtic Fest staff. And happy St. Patrick's Day to you as well from last night. I hope you all had a great time yourselves. Yeah. Very good. And enjoy the rest of Celtic Fest. It runs until Saturday. There's a couple more things between tomorrow and Saturday. Join us for them all and have a great weekend. Take care.
Thank you.
Oh, geez. Yeah.